Howdy partners, it's so good to be here again. As always, I just love talking about films, and Mickey 17 has to be the first really interesting film of 2025. It definitely stands out from your usual kind of film experience, and of course, this is a film helmed by none other than Bong Joon-ho, the famous South Korean filmmaker responsible for that masterpiece Parasite, which is his last film that came out in 2019, so it has been a minute since he's put out anything else, but of course he's also known for other fantastic films such as Snowpiercer and Memoirs of a Murder, which I still have yet to see. I know, shame on me. In any case, Mickey 17 is a decidedly much more casual and lighthearted experience, all things considered. The basic premise of the film is that Mickey is looking for a way out of Earth, and so he signs up for this program to be an expendable. Did he read the fine print? Absolutely not. So he finds himself in this situation where he's basically this human guinea pig that's just thrown out there to run all sorts of dangerous tests to just see what happens to him. An example that you see in the trailer is that him removing his helmet to just breathe in the toxic fumes of this unknown planet and just see what that would do to a human. And yeah, it's pretty much lethal. The ethics of all of this are questionable, but I was genuinely surprised at how profane of an experience this was. There's quite a lot of foul language and questionable decisions taken in this film. This film truly has an incredibly satirical point of view on all these morally questionable actions that are being performed here. And I did think it was a genuinely funny film. I was laughing throughout most of the experience. Though I do think it is a little over the top. Absurdly so. Perhaps a little too absurd. I do think it kind of bludgeons you on the head over and over again with the same thematics. It's not subtle at all. Look no further than Mark Ruffalo's character, who basically is channeling Trump energy throughout the whole film. Granted, it was very amusing and a little unsettling. What strange times we live in. But speaking of acting, I do think Robert Pattinson is fantastic in this film. He really gives a absolute gonzo performance here, and he does some really interesting things with his voice. Each Mickey printout is not exactly the same kind of guy, so there is quite a bit of layer and nuance to his performance, and I feel like Robert Pattinson is having the time of his life. I really do love the last several years of his acting that he's been doing, either in these strange art house indie films like The Lighthouse, or in these bigger blockbuster films such as this one or The Batman. Truly knocking out the park, and he is the absolute highlight of this film. The rest of the cast does a serviceable job, but I do feel like their character development is a little shallow. Naomi Ackie as the love interest in this film as Nasha is quite endearing, and she is a lot of fun, and it is nice to see her in such a big film after her smash hit in Blink Twice. But throughout most of the film, I feel like she doesn't have all that much stage presence. She does have an interesting resurgence later on in the film. Then we also have Steven Yeun, who is a fantastic actor, but I do feel like his character arc kind of went nowhere in a way. I feel like if we had removed his character from the film, it wouldn't have made that big of an impact, even though his character kind of is integral to Mickey's origin story in some sense. And then Holiday Granger's character, who plays Gemma, I do felt had an interesting potential. I thought there was an interesting development that was going on at one point in the film, but I do feel like her character kind of fizzled out, and I was kind of surprised by that. I thought that there was something happening there, but not really in the end. And of course, Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette are just having an absolute blast in this film. They really are just a riot to behold on screen, but there isn't all that much depth to their characters. They basically are just the asshole dictatorial political energy channeled in this film, and yes, they 500% are channeling Trump in this film, and they do bring an appropriate amount of shock value to the drum of the film, but it is pretty predictable, all things considered. But the biggest character development surprise of this film are the aliens themselves. Well, actually, now that I think about it, and the film as well makes a commentary in that the humans themselves are the invading aliens over here. Anyways, those creatures that are referred to as creepers, they're not creepy. They're the cutest things ever. Super sweet and endearing, so much more than I could have ever predicted. But once again, I do feel that it's, in terms of storytelling, a little predictable. It basically is the same story we've seen so many times before in many westerns, where an invading force comes into this foreign land, and there are all these sentient beings already living there. But here I do find that storytelling is very paper thin. Though I will say, in terms of the visual department, I do love the look and feel of this film. Those cute creepers, as I mentioned, are beautifully animated, and all the pain and torture that Mickey had to endure in all his different iterations of his life are a sight to behold, and it was tastefully done, as gruesome as it may be at times. So I did enjoy this film. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I did laugh quite a bit, but I do think it's a little shallow, especially when you compare it to a masterpiece like Parasite that Bong Joon-ho worked on previously. Still totally worth it. I did have a very amusing time, so I would say it's a solid 7 out of 10. Perhaps I was hoping for a little bit more nuance and depth in the storytelling and character development, but I guess you can't win them all. Still, it was an amusing and thought-provoking experience nonetheless. So with all that being said, wishing you and your loved ones nothing but the best. Take care and talk to you soon. time for me to go to bed now. It's late.